All right. Good evening, everybody. This is Pastor Nathan, Pastor Nate, as some people call me. Anyway, so it is Thursday night, March 26th, and I just wanted to jump online and just share some of my thoughts about what's been going on and what we've been currently dealing with. And so, as you guys know, my heart is really in leadership, and my background is in leadership. And so I want to take some time to share with our church family, with our Shion family, and anybody else that's tuning in. I wanted to just jump online and just share some thoughts on our current situation and how we as leaders can not just survive this time, but also thrive in kind of our new normal that we have. And so, I'm going to be trying to join you every Thursday. I was just kind of playing around with the idea and thinking about just, let's join for about 30 minutes on Thursday. And let's talk leadership through these times. Let's see what the Bible is saying and what we can, what information and what knowledge and what wisdom we can gather as far as change, and how you and I as leaders can navigate these current times. I know many of you have had to alter your schedules, whether it's family schedule, whether it's work schedule, childcare. Within the church, we've had to alter our schedule pretty significantly. And, so I just, in my heart, it's just been really stirring within me to jump online and just let's really just talk about, leadership. If you want to join in, if you want to ask some questions as I'm going through this, please definitely do so. I'd love to interact. I love, I see we got a few people joining already. And so I just wanted to jump in and share some things. And one thing that really has come to my mind, come to my heart, it's something that I spoke about a few weeks ago, right when all of this happened. I was fortunate enough to be able to speak that very first night, that very first morning when we went live. And, it just happened to fall on the schedule where I was going to be preaching on Sunday. And one thing really came to my heart that I felt the Holy Spirit and God speaking to me was about, seasons. And so in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, the Bible talks about 28 different seasons. And, there are all these different seasons. And some of them we know, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck whatever's planted, a time to kill, time to heal, and so on and so forth. But what I really love in verse 1, Solomon says, he says, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. And, right now we're in a season. A month ago we were in a completely different season. And so today we're in this new season of communicating with each other online with, many of you are learning Zoom. Many of you are learning, conference calling, FaceTiming, doing virtual Bible studies. We have gone to, online only services and making, a lot of changes. And it is a new season. When we look at a season, we have to remember that, one season has ended and a new one has begun. And it's not that, something has died or something has gone away. It's just, it is time for a new season. And eventually this season will end and a new season will begin. And if that looks like going back to, maybe adding or going back to how we used to do church, going back to how we used to work, how we used to do daycare, we will eventually go back to those things we used to do, but something will be different, right? Something will be different. We're growing more accustomed to using this type of technology. We're growing more accustomed to seeing that, hey, we can work from home or we can operate in a different way. We've been thrust into this season. And when you're thrust or put into a new season, you have to learn to adapt. And so as leaders, and the whole point of this is to kind of look at it from a leadership perspective. And, if you've heard me speak and our philosophy on leadership is everybody is a leader. You have influence. And, my mentor, John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And even little kids, if your child has ever convinced you to buy that box of cereal that you swore up and down you weren't going to buy, or the ice cream that you said you weren't going to buy, but some way, somehow, they spoke to you, whether they begged, whether they cried, whether they gave you those puppy eyes, they exerted some influence over you and caused you to buy that cereal or that toy or that ice cream, right? That is influence. That's leadership. And obviously it's not, skilled leadership, but it is influence. And so leadership is influence, and all of us have some type of influence. We have influence over certain people in our group, certain people in our families, whether it's in ministry, and certain relationships at work or with friends. But during this time that we're in, I think it's of the utmost importance that leaders stand up, and real leaders stand up. And I don't believe there's any more important or more significant people to lead than individuals in the church. Because when you look around, there is a lot of doubt, there's a lot of fear, there is a lot of scarcity mindset. And you see that with people running to the stores and hoarding and buying things. There's this mindset that there's not enough, that there's only a certain amount of pieces to the pie. And, I need to get my piece of the pie, or I'm going to miss out, or I'm going to suffer it, or I'm going to be in want or in need. And if you didn't tune in to the pastor's message last night on the midweek service, I really encourage you to go back and look on one of our platforms and listen to that message talking about how God is our provision. And, one thing that I took away from that is where he says, we have need, but we have needs, but we're not in need. And so, yeah, we all have, there's a need for this and a need for that, but we're not in need. We're begging or we're missing out on something, because God promises that he's going to provide us everything that we need, everything to sustain us, right? We might have wants that we can't have right now, right? You want to go to the movies, you want to hang out with your friends, but we don't have needs where we're begging or where we're in severe lack. And he used the words of Paul, where Paul said, hey, there was times I lived humbly and times I lived extravagantly in abundance and overflow. But in all of that, God gave him the strength. And so, going back to Ecclesiastes, the 28 different seasons. That's a lot of seasons to come in and out of. And as leaders, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing in order to lead those or influence those or help those that we are leading to navigate through this? And, if you've ever driven a stick shift, I don't drive a stick shift. But if it's one thing about a stick shift, you have to know how to shift gears. And if you don't know how to correctly shift gears, you are going to grind to a halt. You're going to hear the gears and the transmission, and you're going to sputter. And what is happening right now is we are going through shifts, and we are leader shifting. It's a book by my mentor. It's called, Leadership. It's a great book. And that's a little bit of what I'm going to delve into today, just for a little bit, and looking at why it's important to know how to shift as leaders, to know how to navigate the times and not wait. Because, for example, if you're driving and you're in first gear and you have to go into second gear, but you're not prepared to do so, or you don't know how to, manage the clutch and the brake and the gas and the gear, you're going to grind to a halt. And then what's going to happen is it's going to take more energy. It's going to take more time. You're going to lose momentum. And in these times that we're in right now, with many things changing, with whether it being the schools that are pretty much going to be postponed till the end of the year, maybe it's your job. Maybe it's your job market that you're in has changed. Maybe you're home from work. Daycare, all these different things that have changed. If we are not ready to move and to flow with them, what can happen is our lives can grind to a halt, and we can stop, just like that truck that's, the person driving that stick shift that doesn't know how to change gears. And so our momentum can stop in our life. We can get frustrated. We can look at the negative that, man, I'm stuck here and I need to get down that street. Or if you're moving up a hill and you're stuck in gear, what happens? You start to fall backwards. And so if we're not careful and we let the circumstances dictate, what's going on, we're going to end up either grinding to a halt or falling back, and we're going to lose the momentum in our life. Now, I don't know what momentum you had going into this change that happened in March. I don't know what was happening in your life or in your ministry, in your relationships. Some of you were probably really excited about school. Some of you may be excited about work. Some of you, maybe you were ready for a break, and maybe you need to be more specific in your prayers to God. But when we look at that, we have to ask ourselves, how can we continually be prepared? Because I can guarantee you this, if there's one thing I can guarantee you, is this will not be the only change that we will see in our lifetime. This will not be the only significant shift that you and I will have to make as leaders, as parents, as ministry leaders, as those who influence relatives or people in the workspace. This will not be the only change we're going to have to make and the shift we're going to have to make. So if anything, this is a great time, because many of us are on pause right now, but this is a great time to learn how can we shift and how can we move and see forward as leaders to guide those individuals, to guide those people that God has put in our path, to guide our family, our kids, our spouses. How can we prepare right now and look at this circumstance and lead not just with assurance and confidence, but lead in a way that's with integrity, lead in a way that honors God, lead in a way that shows that we put our trust in God. Because, there's a lot of people who say they believe in God and they trust in God, and those same people were running out to the stores to hoard toilet paper and eggs, right? I went to Costco, and nobody was buying vitamins but toilet paper and eggs, right? And so I'm not trying to criticize, but I'm just saying, when we say we put our trust in God, do we lead that way? And so there's a couple things I just want us to kind of focus on. And you know what? We have to understand life is moving much faster now than it has ever been. And it will continue to move faster. Many organizations, whether it's churches, whether it's companies, businesses, even families, have had to turn to technology to stay connected, right? And this technology has been around for so long. It's been around. We've had it. Some have been using it, but some have been pushed into this and are now barely becoming adapted to it and learning how to use it, which, it's good. It's great. Thank God for this technology. It's a great way, a great avenue to get messages across and to stay connected. But life is moving much faster now, and it will continue to move much faster. Organizations and companies that work in this technology, once this change happened, their platforms were being flooded. I use the teleconferencing, freeconferencing.com, and it's a great program. It's a great platform to use, the phone and to be on a conference call. But when this change happened and businesses had to close down, it was inundated with users. And so these companies now are moving in such a way where they're advancing their technology to meet the high demand, and they're preparing for the future. And so we have to understand that life is moving faster, and the future seems to be coming at us faster than we think, and it'll be here before we know it. When we're young, everything seems to be going so slow, but as we get older, things come quickly. Some of you are celebrating your birthdays through, virtual, having virtual birthday parties, and you never thought that this would be the way that we would do things right now. Now, eventually that'll change. Eventually it'll go back and you'll have people in your life. But you can see that as things change, as circumstances change in our environment, the future is never going to stop coming. The future is constantly coming forward. And we have to be ready and prepared and think ahead. But without doing it in a way that stresses us out, that causes anxiety. As Solomon said here, he said, look, to everything there is a season and a time for purpose under heaven. And so there's a time for the future to come. There's a time to be present and in the present, but we also have to prepare. So we have to learn how to navigate this preparing for the future, living in the present, and still appreciating the past, right? Without being stuck and grinding things to a halt. And you know what? With all of this happening, it will never, ever, ever be as bad as you think it'll be. It'll never be as bad as you think it'll be. We just have to understand that it is our job as leaders, as those who put our trust in something greater than us and God, that we can shift with this and we can be prepared and we don't have to get anxious. So what is leadership? I'm just going to read it straight out of the book here. It says, it is an ability and willingness to make a leadership change that will positively enhance organizational and personal growth. And that organization can be your family, it can be your ministry, it can be your work, your church, but it's an ability. So you got to have the ability and the willingness. You got to be able to do it and want to do it, but to make a leadership change that will positively enhance organizational and personal growth. There's a lot of people right now and a lot of thinking, and this is scarcity mindset I'm talking about here, that they don't want to make any changes. They're scared to make any ground in this moment, and they want to stay safe. And that's not what leader shifting is. That's just kind of burying your head in the hole and saying, we hope this passes, we hope this changes. And by the time they take their head out of the hole, guess what? Life has moved on and we are living in a new normal, right? So we have to have the ability and the willingness to do this, okay? So there was a study that stated that the top 3 leadership qualities that will be important in the years ahead are the ability to motivate staff, right? The ability to work well across all cultures, and the ability to facilitate change. And pretty much all 3 of those were in equal points. And that's really what it's going to take for us to look forward. And how do we acquire these things? We have to ask ourselves, do we understand, conformity and adaptability? There's a big difference between conforming and adapting. What we're going through today, people are either conforming to it and they're just getting used to it. They're allowing the changes to come at them and they're saying, okay, well, this is the new normal, so I'm just going to accept it, right? But when you adapt to it, you're actually looking at, how can I take advantage of it? How can I see what is happening in the change? And how can I take advantage and make a positive change for my family, for my ministry, for my work, for my calling, for my personal growth? There's 2 different ways to always look at something. You can look at it with the scarcity mindset, or you can look at it with an abundance mindset. Now, understand, I'm not trying to go, into far off in this direction, but just follow me on this base here. When we look at things with the scarcity mindset, we're looking at things based off a perspective of, I need to take care of and protect what I have here, right? And it's like, this is all I'm ever going to get. And if I change anything, I'm going to lose it. And that's a scarcity mindset. But an abundance mindset, right, is a mindset that says that every opportunity, every change is an opportunity to grow and to learn. You can't learn in conformity. You cannot learn in comfort. You can't learn in the state that you stay in. The only time you learn is when you move out of the state you're in into the unknown. And when you move into the unknown, you have to, and you're forced to learn in that circle and learn new ways of connecting, new ways of communicating. And really, this is what Jesus did with the disciples. What were they doing? They were fishermen. They were used to every day going out and fishing and working hard, working diligent, right? They were masters at their craft. But Jesus had a greater plan for them. But he could not allow them, or they would not be able to achieve that plan if he did not pull them out of that season of fishing for fish and pull them into this new season of fishing for men. But even though fishing for fish and men, the principles are the same. You can only fish for fish out where the fish are, right? And you can only fish for men, in Christ's perspective, what he was saying, you can only fish for men if you go out to where the people are. And you gotta, use the right bait. There's principles to that. But he said, I can't allow you to stay there. You gotta come over here. So I'm gonna bring you into this circle for 1.5 years. I'm gonna disciple you. I'm gonna prepare you. I'm gonna challenge you. I'm gonna send you out. It's a new season for their lives. And when times got tough, at the end, when Christ was taken and crucified, where did they find themselves? They went back to being fishermen. And that's where Jesus went and got them again. And he said, hey guys, I've called you to be fishermen. And then he gave them the commission, the Great Commission. And so we look at, it's the season. We are in a new season. And are we conforming to the season that we're in, or are we adapting to it? So that's one question I want you to ask yourselves. I want you to ask you, because in some aspects we're doing both. But we want to intentionally and look at it and say, okay, God, what are you giving me right now? What opportunities do I have right now? What opportunities am I not seeing with what I have right now? For some of us, we may be conforming to some things. Hey, I'm home now. My kids are not in school. So I got to figure out how to make it work, right? Others are adapting to this and saying, hey, how can I take advantage of this present circumstance with my children here, with me having maybe some extra time, with our church being online and being creative? Conformity or adaptability? Ask yourselves, where are you at, right? Pastor Mario, how you doing? Good to see you there, brother. We need to be prepared for this opportunity. And so leadershifting is moving us forward, right, in the face of the natural temptation to be mentally rigid. It's very comfortable to stay in this rigid place of this is how we do things, and we just can't wait to get back to them. I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to go back to some things, but it's never, ever going to be the same. It's never, ever going to be the same. And so conformity or adaptability, I want to leave you with just a couple more questions here to really challenge us in this and really do some introspective and to pray and ask God to search our heart and allow the Holy Spirit to really challenge us this in time. How open are we being to change right now? How open are we being to change in our ministry, in our family, in our place of work, in whatever organization and platform that we're on? And then think about this. Are you willing to start asking more questions instead of giving more answers? I can tell you this is hard for me. This is something I have to work on. I have to be intentional because I want to give answers, right? I want to figure out the problem. I'm a very critical thinker, so I want to look at it from all different angles and say, okay, this is how you do it. Go fix it. But in times like this, when we need to leadershift and continue the momentum, we have to begin to ask more questions instead of giving more answers. We have to open it up and say, what can we really do with this moment? What can we do with this moment? And here's something I really, as believers, as Christians, as Christ followers, as family, here's what I just want to leave with you. In this time, right, where normally we would connect on Mondays and Wednesdays, your midweek service, and maybe even during the week, right? We would fellowship and connect with one another. But now it's a little bit different, right? But here's a question I want to ask you. How are we staying connected, not just with one another, but with God? How are we worshiping God? How are we able to adapt to this new way of being able to worship God? And I'm talking about more than just putting on some headphones and more than just listening to a playlist. In our church, we say that we worship God with everything. Well, I'm going to tell you, right now is the time to figure out what that everything means for you and I, right? We say it in terms of, when we worship God with our offerings and our tithes, that's worship. When we worship God with our studying, that's worship. When we lift our hands and sing, yeah, that's worship. But how can we get more creative in worshiping God in this time? Because I guarantee you the one thing that's going to get us through this is our connection to God. It's our connection to God, this Holy Spirit being grounded in that peace and assurance that He's going to get us through this. And we're not afraid of every time someone comes close to us. We're not afraid of somebody being 5 feet from us, or we're not afraid every time somebody sneezes or coughs. But we know, right, that God is going to give us a peace, and His peace that surpasses all understanding. That is the promise that He gave us. That means that when everything is falling apart and it seems that we're going through hell, right? He tells us in Philippians 4 that He's going to give us peace that surpasses all understanding. When everybody cannot figure out how we are calm and how we can trust God, that's the peace that He gives us. And that's the peace we need in this time. That's the peace that's going to help us to shift and move in this season right now. And so just these things I want to leave you. Think about it. Are you adapting or are you conforming? And how creative can you be in your worship? And so my time is up. I just wanted to jump on here and spend about 30 minutes with you. And if you really liked it, I would love some feedback. I love some questions and things that you may want me to bring up or for us to talk about and discuss. But what I really, the whole point of this is just sitting down and sharing with you from my heart, from what I feel God speaking to me, and what I'm reading and what I'm learning, and saying, how can we navigate through this time? And how can we be the best leaders that God has called us to be? Because I honestly believe deep down in my heart, if there's one thing that the world needs right now, is godly leaders. Godly leaders that have placed their faith and their feet are firmly planted in the word and trusting in God. And they need examples. They need individuals that can come and assure them that there is a God and he loves them, and his promises that he will never leave us or forsake us. His promises that he will provide for every one of our needs, and he will be there to the very end. And we need to be those leaders to lead individuals in this time and to influence individuals in this time. So God bless you. Once again, just challenge yourself. Challenge yourself. Look at every aspect as much as you can. Journal it, write it down. Are you adapting? Are you conforming? How can you be creative during this time of leadershifting? Once again, guys, we're going to do 30 minutes on Thursdays. Times will probably vary, but I want to do at least 30 minutes on Thursdays with you. I love you guys. Stay safe out there. Wash your hands, right? But continue to love each other, continue to get on and just, share the love of God, encourage one another, lift each other up, support your pastors, encourage your pastors. They've never been leading through a time like this. This is something new for all pastors, regardless of how big or small their church is. So support your pastors, love them, pray on them, support your leaders, encourage them, thank them for the hard work that they're doing and just the hours that they're putting in, because this is a new season for the church. And I believe that this is going to be a great season because God is opening the doors and the word of God is flooding, social media platforms. So let's not stop. Let's take advantage. Let's adapt to this and let's take more and more ground and let's grow. God bless you. Have a great night. Love y'all.